Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning. I don't know. We have people joining us today from various parts of the world, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting today, which involves family meals and family travel, which hopefully leads to a lot of family cohesion. And let me say before I start my remarks that if you have any questions as we go along, please put them in the chat box because we will have a Q&A as we usually do after our two speakers have given their presentations. And also, if you have any comments you would like to pass on, at the end of the meeting, you can just send them along to the email address with which you received the invitation to today's meeting. So having gotten those housekeeping chores out of the way, let me just introduce today's event. As you all know, at the Family NGO Committee, we like to recall the statement on the family as written in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which says, "The family is the natural and fundamental group unit of society and is entitled to protection by society and the state." Some countries, actually only a few, have adopted family-friendly policies, but I have to say with limited success. So it's better to look closer to home and see what will enhance family flourishing. So in thinking about today's meeting, I reflected on my own personal experience. In my small Italian family, we had family dinner together. And when I was only 9 years old, my parents took me to Italy for the first time. And yes, I did learn quite a lot. So I finally came up with the title you saw on the flyer attached to your email invitation. And I was very fortunate indeed to have located two exceptional eminent experts who have accepted my invitation to speak to us today. First, we have Lidia Bastianich and Bruce Poon who will present their observations on the impact of sharing family meals and taking a trip together as a family. Both activities may very well lead to family cohesion, and that in turn would lead to strong families that society desperately needs today. So since traveling is best on a full stomach, I thought we would start with our food person, Lidia Bastianich. So Lidia Bastianich is a world-famous chef and restaurateur, and has had her own TV program, which won, it's an Emmy-winning TV show, and she's had this now for decades. And here in New York, it's available on Create TV, and it's also available in channels, I guess, just all over the world. Lydia won an Emmy Award a few years ago, and she is also author or co-author with her wonderful daughter, Tanya, of close to or just about 20 books, all cookbooks. However, my favorite book is Lydia's autobiography, which is My American Dream, A Life of Love, Family, and Food. Here's my copy right here, Lydia.
Looks good.
So anyway, Lydia is fond of food and cooking, and their ability to connect both family and friends. So Lydia was born in, just a little bit of background, Lydia was born in Pola, an Italian town on the small Istrian peninsula in northeastern Italy, a territory that was ceded to Yugoslavia after World War II. Once the communist government of Marshal Tito came to power in that area, as well as the rest of Yugoslavia, they began an ugly phase of ethnic cleansing of Italians from that area. The Italians were massacred by the thousands. It is believed that the exact number is not known. They were thrown into deep crevasses that characterized the geographical terrain of that area. Some were shot, some were just thrown alive right into these crevasses. So to avoid persecution and possible death, Italians migrated as refugees to firmer Italian territory elsewhere. And Lydia's family, her mother, father, and brother, Franco, together with Lydia, they became refugees. They were in Trieste for a couple of years, and eventually they emigrated to the United States and resettled in a few places, including Astoria, Queens, courtesy of Catholic Charities. From her first job in a bakery, Lydia worked very hard to become the renowned chef, restaurateur, and food industry entrepreneur that she is today. Lydia often appears with family members on her TV program, including her 5 grandchildren, and also on some of the programs that I like to watch almost every week. There are clips from older programs showing cooking, eating, and drinking with her wonderful mother, Ermelina, who died in 2021, shortly after celebrating her 100th birthday. Lydia's latest book, which came out a year or so ago, is called From Our Family Table to Yours. And this makes a perfect introduction to the impact of shared family meals. As Lydia often says, her 2 passions in life are food and family. So before we go to Tutti a tavola mangiare, Lydia, please tell us how it all comes together. The floor is yours, and thank you for being with us.
Well, thank you for having me, Vinny, and it's my pleasure. It's sharing what I love to do. I mean, I've been a chef in restaurants, have restaurants the last 50 years, on television actually more than 25 years. And what do I profess? I think, just cooking properly, eating, feeding, nurturing your family, nurturing your friends with body sort of nourishment, but also emotional, sentimental nourishment. Food is at the basis of all of us, no matter what culture you are. You need food to survive. And the fact of food, cooking food, sharing food, that's also reflects very much the culture that you are, the where you are in geographic topography, the climate, all determines that. But starting from a newly born and the connection to the mother with milk, and that nurturing of raising or giving this child continued life continues and multiplies, I think, as the family grows. And still to this day, the best place to be, I feel, for emotional strength, for sentiments, for social strength, for positive messages, is a table where we all share some food, when we share food together. And so I am delighted to be here. And I wasn't aware of this NGO that existed in actually accenting and protecting and promoting the family unity, and certainly being together is what gave me the strength. Vinny, my mother, as you said, passed away 4 years ago, but she lived with me, and in turn, my daughter and her children, the grandchildren, lived in walking distance from the house, and cooking together with food, preparing food, and sharing food was, I think, what gave me the strength to be who I am, to continue, sort of this message that I feel is so important, but it's also so rewarding. Should I continue, or are you going to ask me questions? Hello.
Okay. Yes, I'm here. I had muted myself, but
Uh-huh.
please continue. Yeah, because we do have questions, but they will come at the end. Yeah. So please tell us some more.
Well,
You have about 15 minutes, Lydia.
okay, then I will continue. As you stated, my sort of life and how it. I was born right after the war, and lived in a situation where uh, being persecuted for your ethnicity. We weren't allowed to speak Italian. We weren't allowed to go to church, and food was also scarce. So we did. My mother was actually a teacher, an elementary school teacher, but she put my brother and myself with grandma. Grandma was a little bit out of the city, and there she felt we were secure, away from the politics of a big city. But yes, we were secure because we had grandma. Again, it's, another connection, family, the deep roots. And you know what I think? I think, Vinny, today, sometimes grandparents are not really pulled in the equation or appreciated as much. But I think they're so important to children, to give children stability, to give children love. It's unquestionable love, and to just nourish them. So here I was as a small child, my brother and I, with grandma and grandpa in a small town, and she provided food for all of us. So we had a setting where we had all kinds of courtyard animals, we called them, and chickens and ducks, and we had goats, and we had 2 pigs, and we had, of course, a whole garden, seasonal garden. But I would help grandma, run to get the eggs, the warm eggs in the morning, milk the goats, have my cafe latte, if you will, in the morning with the goat milk, extra milk with ricotta, and so for me, connected to the, she would send me in the garden, and she said, "Go, it was springtime, go get the peas, go get the favas," and in the process, I learned about the art, the earth, the seasonality, and the appreciation of not wasting or having food, and using every part of the food. And also, I was grandma's helper, so I wasn't a chef. I was young, certainly, but I would help to mix the pot. I would help to sort of peel the potatoes. But what brings me mostly back was the moments where all of that culminated into a meal. And we would all sort of sit around the table. And sometimes, even the neighbors, because they are, in Italy, cousins live next to each other. So that was another connecting factor of family and strength. And I think that the strength that I got, to go ahead, to make it happen, in my life as a young refugee here coming to America at 12 years old, was really rooted and formulated in those times where the security of a family was there. No matter what happened, I knew that I was secure. Grandma hugged me. Mom and Dad would come, and we would all eat together. And we had food in a time that maybe was difficult. We also shared food with the neighbors. If they didn't have, and we had an extra pot of soup, they would come over and eat and share. And when we ultimately, with my parents, ultimately decided to escape back to go to, because once it was 1947 February, that the Paris Treaty into effect, where the border really came down, and the communism really raised the border. Was a tough border with barbed wire, with sort of soldiers and whatever. So they really wanted to sort of close off, so that there would be no more Italian influence, and that the land that they acquired during the peace treaty, if you will, would remain theirs. And they inculcated us with their language, with their beliefs, and so on. But my parents decided that this was no way to raise the children. And ultimately, since, when the border went down, we had family left over on the other side, which was Trieste and which was Italy. And my mother, my brother, and I asked to be, my mother actually asked to go see her aunt in Trieste because she wasn't feeling well. Now, they wouldn't allow the whole family to go. My father had to stay behind. So we went. We thought as kids that we were going for a visit. We were very excited. But 2 weeks after, at night, my father appeared, and he literally escaped the border, and he was shot at, and the dogs were running after him, but he made it. And we were all together as a family, which was important, togetherness of a family, which gives strength, in Trieste. Now, in Trieste, we were refugees. We didn't have the right papers because they changed our names and whatever. Ultimately, we asked for asylum, and we were put in a refugee camp. For 2 years, as a child from 10 to 12, I lived in a refugee camp. It was San Saba. It still exists as a museum now in Trieste. For those of you that go visit in northern Italy, all the way up there, I go periodically to visit. And let me interject that not only I made sure my children, when they heard the story, I bring my grandchildren, even though they're adults now, we go periodically so that they can see that, that the world can sometimes really upset your life and challenges that come, but you have to be strong. And I think what in our case was the unity of the family. So in this camp, there were a lot of single people that escaped from, at that time was Central Europe, Hungary, Poland, Czechoslovakia, but there was also families, and the importance of families was really to stay together. Even though this was a big camp and we were sort of each had a little corner to live in, the unity, I felt the strength that, I had my mother and father, and they will resolve this. And I guess, the family connection was there, was ever stronger. And in 2 years thereafter was 1958. Dwight Eisenhower was the president. He opened immigration for people fleeing communism. And so our family were given this opportunity to come to America. And not unlike today, let me tell you, we were helped and taken in by the Catholic Charities. And they put us in a hotel when we first came, not like today. And then they found a little home for us in New Jersey, and we settled. And Vinny, what I recall is, yes, the unit. As long as I recall as a child, as long as I had my family unit, I was safe. And then finally, when we got a little home that we could close the door, when I finally could close that door, my family could stay, I felt safe. And so here I was, a young immigrant in America, this great country that it is, and being accepted, and also being helped by a lot of people, a lot of neighbors or whatever, people we didn't know came. They brought food, they brought chairs, they brought towels, whatever. And my life in America began. But it was always with the family. The strength that I feel comes from the family. And I hope that I sort of transported that to my children, the two children. And as I said, once my children had children, there were 4 generations in my house, and there felt nothing better and more secure than being, knowing as a child especially, that these people loved you and wanted you and hugged you and kissed you and wanted the best for you. And I think that sometimes, maybe in today's world, if children or teenagers, the age is a little sensitive, get lost. I think having that meal together at the family, discussing things, and really sort of binds the situation and helps these children, these young teenagers, from maybe feeling secure and moving on. You know, we are eating is a primary sort of action of us human beings. It's almost on an animal level. We have to eat because we need to survive. This is a need that we have, a biological need. But when you sit down to eat, all your defense systems are off in a sense. You know, it's why do we have meals when we want to when we propose? We have business meals for deals because in eating properly, you know, and in Italian custom always is ti verrà indigestione se non ti rilassi. You know, you have to relax to take in the food. In relaxing, actually, at that table, many other things happen. This sort of antagonism that we sometimes have in our mind goes away, and we are taking in this nourishment, especially the food is good, the family, and the discussion and the exchange that goes into a family binding or bonding. It happens. So the food is extremely important. Eating together and it doesn't have to be an extraordinary meal. I mean, spaghetti aglio olio could be just as good, even a sandwich. But you know, when I see children kind of taking their plate or going in front of television or going into the room or with their iPhones there, that needs to be monitored, especially as children grow up and, you know, have their attention on the food because it's good, because they digest it properly, but also because the communication that goes on at the table.
That's wonderful. Of course, you know, I got your book and I read it all, and I was rereading parts of it last night. And you mentioned about how your father escaped. I mean, that was so tragic, and I was so moved when I originally read that part. I mean, he left his house, leaving everything behind.
That's right.
And just walked from home to
right.
You had some relatives in Trieste. Somehow you get, but it was a harrowing trip through. You know, you mentioned the dogs and whatnot, and when he arrived, you know, he was just covered with dirt and mud and whatnot, and it was an incredible escape.
Yeah, Vina, you know, they had to, because they were very cautious of, especially the Italian families. And so there couldn't be any sign of my family leaving. So the house remained all intact, everything. He went to his regular position or whatever. And then one night he took off, and he did take part of it. He took a bus and got off in the middle. And from Pola to Trieste, it's about 120 kilometers. So it's a hike. And indeed, when he came closer to the border, because they were watching the border, he got off the bus and walked and walked and walked. And he said, you know, when I saw him that night at 1 o'clock, and, you know, everybody was sort of excited and crying, my mother, my aunt, but he was all muddy and whatever. And he actually collapsed there. And then years after, I asked him, I said, Dad, how come you were so muddy? What was it? Was it raining, whatever? He said, no. He said, the dogs were ensuing me. And I found a puddle of water and mud, and I rolled into it so that they wouldn't follow my scent. So he would lose his scent. And that's how he made it over the border. So, you know, you think about people that want to continue their life, that want to better their life for their family and for their children. And I could never forget what my father did. And he did because freedom for his family, for his children. So absolutely, it was life has a lot of I guess difficulties along the way and encounters. We had at the time was the war, and today it might be different situations, whatever. But you know, if one stays close to the family, with the family, it gains strength. And Vinay, and all of you out there, one of the things that I recalled, why I ask myself often, why do you are so passionate about cooking? Why do you love cooking? And it is a way of giving. It is a way of nurturing. And I know my grandmother, my mother, all the people along the way really nurtured us and, our life and stay close. But what I remember, because once I realized, we were in Trieste, I was in the camp, and I realized that I would not go back because as children, we didn't know that we are not going to go back to Pola. And I realized that we're not going back, and I'm not going to see grandma, and I'm not going to see my goats, all the things. I became, I guess, nostalgic, and I began to cook, but I cooked all the elements that I recall grandma. So the flavors, the aromas brought me back to a safe, comfortable place with grandma. And I think that's my passion with cooking. And that's what food has done for me, has given me that security, that connection to who I am, that sort of love and affection that comes with nurturing somebody, with feeding somebody. And till this day, I went through my children, my grandchildren, still, that there's nothing better for me than to cook something, put it on the table, and have everybody around the table. But it's not only, it's not only the emotion that I get directly. Is observing the interaction between the cousins, the brothers, the sisters, all of that really I see that's going to be a connecting link for them as they grow their families and their generations. And, talking about, I know Bruce is going to talk about travel, but one of the things that I include besides food is absolutely travel. And for my children, when they graduate, especially college and whatever, they're big now. I have them on my show. So those of you that watch my show sees my grandchildren, my children, my mother. But I offer my children, instead of a monetary gift or something, a trip. And we go traveling wherever they want. And not only to the one that's graduating, but the siblings, the cousins are involved. So it's grandma, not the mother and father. I don't want the mothers and fathers because then the dynamic changes. I want them, for me, on the trip, because I think traveling gives them so much knowledge of what the world is, of other cultures, of other people. And you know what? Life is a collection of memories. And I am giving them memories that they will have to remember grandma, remember their heritage, even though I might be long gone.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lidia. This is wonderful. And what you just said about travel makes a wonderful introduction for Bruce. But I don't think we're going to be, we're finished with meals, because I understand some of the National Geographic family journeys include having meals with foreign families as they travel in the various countries. So let me just give a little introduction for Bruce. Now you've appeared in a bigger form on our screens here. So Bruce Poon Tip founded G Adventures. Originally it was called Gap Adventures, when he was only 22 years old, following an extended backpack trip that he took. Today, his company is a multinational company, and he is CEO. And this year is celebrating its 35 years in business. So happy 35th anniversary, Bruce.
Thank you.
To your company.
Thank you.
G Adventures has, as part of the something like 700 or so tours and trips that they offer, has a set of tours that are in conjunction with National Geographic, and they're called National Geographic Family Journeys. And there are about 20 or so different family journeys on offer. Anyone can go online and see all this. It's all there. And the range is really very broad. I mean, they range from Alaska to Greece to Tanzania to Japan, Costa Rica, and many, many more. So today, his company is the largest group adventure travel company, and National Geographic is part of an important part of what they offer. So when families travel on various journeys, they also get to meet and share a meal with a local family. So we're going to hear something about that, I think, from Bruce about how families react. So Bruce is also engaged in several philanthropic endeavors. He has written a few books himself relating to travel and entrepreneurship, and even produced a documentary film relating to certain aspects of responsible tourism. Bruce is well known in the travel industry and has won several awards. Most recently, only last year, he was honored as an officer of the Order of Canada for his contributions in the travel industry. Bruce's company is based in Toronto, where he also resides when he is not traveling. But since he travels a lot today, I understand he is speaking to us from Barbados, and I'm glad the the technology is good enough for us to have you. I was a little worried earlier today. Congratulations, I forgot to add on your honorary well, what Canada conferred on you. I guess it's for Americans is probably the equivalent of something like the Presidential Medal of Honor for contributions made to a particular country. So well, without further ado, I think it's time we heard something about how family travel brings us all together as family. So Bruce, please take it away.
Great.
And thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Great to be here. I've got a presentation to show you. It's a very interesting audience. Hopefully you get something out of this in terms of from a tour operator's perspective, telling you a little bit about our story on our journey to travel, family travel. And I'll also tell you a little bit about my experience as well, because I travel extensively with my family, and I'll go over a little bit of all that, and hopefully get a chance to take your questions. But from a tour operator perspective, I'm here to talk a little bit about National Geographic Journeys and our family program. So, like, first speaking about, let me just share a screen, can everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. So now I can't see everybody, but I see my screen. So family journeys, like how it started, like just giving a little bit about the introduction of that. As mentioned in my introduction, I started G Adventures 35 years ago. And it started with actually, you could say, a family journey with this gentleman here in this picture. His name is Delphine, who lives in the rainforest in Ecuador. The Pimpilala tribe is his tribe. We started running groups with him in 1990, one group a month. And our goal actually wasn't bringing families, but it was to witness his families. He has his whole family in the rainforest. And, he's a prime example of how what we do works, because he's managed to maintain his culture and his community in the rainforest after all these years, where I think when we went back then back in 1990, there was numerous families and communities living in the rainforest, but now his family is the only one that's still there. They managed to maintain their culture because of tourism. The family side of that is a bit in reverse, as we went to witness his family. I remember when we first went in 1990, Delphine and I are very close. We're like brothers now. We've known each other all these years. We've kind of grown up together. And when I went to go see him in 1990, we had competitions with climbing a tree, who could climb the tree the fastest. And when I go see him now, 35 years later, he can still climb a tree and I can't. So that's the kind of our story of our kind of friendship over the years. The family kind of program for us it came actually originally through data that we kind of saw a hole in our travelers. They kind of disappear at 31 or 32, and then they kind of reappeared at age 45, 48. So for the needs of our business, we realized that our travelers who wanted to travel with us in the way that we traveled would disappear having families. And so we, originally started allowing people to take, kids on a certain age. We wouldn't take young kids, but we'd allow mature children to travel on some of our trips. So you could travel with children on our trips. But after we kind of dug into the data, and I'm going to show you some of that today, we realized that the families wanted something completely different. And the rise of multi-generational travel has really exploded, I would say, especially since COVID, but just before that, I would say the last 10 years, we've seen the growth of it, but it's been really the last 5 years that it's grown significantly. We launched National Geographic over 10 years ago. The product did so well, we wanted to open up these experiences to families. Once we kind of, once we determined there was a market there and people wanted to travel with their kids, and we started asking them what they actually wanted, we were very surprised because it was very different in terms of their motivation, the motivations of our general customer. And we were very surprised by that, believe it or not. As a travel company, we were very surprised that the motivation of travelers with families had very different reasons on why they wanted to travel and what they wanted out of those experiences. But there was a shift away from this all-inclusive concept, the kids club model, where you kind of drop your kids off for the day in a kids club so you can have time away from your kids, really. And we've seen that this next generation of as we kind of millennials are now having children, but the Gen X generation, who originally our the customers, the parents, were actually really wanted to spend more time with their children. They wanted to experience things with their children, and it was very different than the baby boomer, the boomer generation, who created that whole industry of the all-inclusive kind of compound resort model. So we did research, and the insights that 90% wanted long-lasting long-lasting memories. So that's a fairly obvious one. And multi-generational travel. And when I say multi-generational travel, we're actually seeing now grandparents wanting to travel with their grandkids alone without the parents. So that's a whole other demographic that we never. And why is that happening? Because the boomer generation is staying healthier and fitter longer. Under G Adventures, we launched the most successful product we launched in the last 2 years was as a product we call G Lux. And G Lux is a much higher comfort level active trip, because people are being active younger. We're getting 80-year-olds constantly climbing Kilimanjaro, doing the Inca Trail, and they're traveling and longer. So, which is great for us for business, but also the multi-generational travel concept is being redefined, and it's kind of a wider spectrum now, because the grandparents want to take their grandkids without the parents. And now that used to be limited to older grandkids, like graduation presents, university graduation presents, travel with grandparents to Europe or Italy. But now it's actually, we want to take the kids away when they're 8, 10, 12, when they're young, to spend time with their grandparents. And we're seeing a lot more of that. I'm talking about National Geographic here, but we also, operate as well for Smithsonian, and Smithsonian is, really big with multi-generational travel, but their target market is grandparents with grandkids. So we're seeing that the actual growing of the market itself. 85% of travelers wanted experiences and activities that could be enjoyed by the entire family. Again, very different than when we had kids on trips, where we actually were creating experiences that were suitable for the adults, and then we would have childcare for the kids, separated from the adults, right? That is all the same thing as where you'd have the kids club concept and all inclusive. But more, we found that 85%, which is a huge number, wanted activities that the whole family can participate in, that they could be in together. And that changes the landscape of the experience of the trip for everyone, but also changes the choices of what you're wanting to do and in terms of the activities they actually do. Like seeing temples all day is not very exciting for kids. but you can make it exciting by doing it on, on these, by the segues, or doing just different ways in which you can experience things, and thinking what is, good for the whole family, changed how we kind of look at, running programs for families. Love to learn while traveling. So this is obviously a big one. The kind of, again, lifelong learning, that concept of lifelong learning, which there's actually companies that specialize that for travelers. It's always meant being older, like learning until you die kind of thing, until you're, but lifelong learning now is expanding into the family concept with people that are younger. So and you want to encourage kids when they're very young to be lifelong learners. And that is, and the best way to do that actually is during, their holiday time. Families that travel together, who's it for? Is the next thing that we kind of ask when we're trying to actually narrow the actual customer down, because it's the parent or the grandparent that's paying, but it's the child that actually is going to give us the review. So who is that customer? There's a real rise, as I said, in multi-generational travelers and families of all shapes and sizes. We're seeing in-laws taking, uncles and aunts traveling with their children, but bringing their cousins along with trips. And this is something that we'd never thought we'd ever have, and something we did not have definitely 20 years ago when G Adventures, or 30 years ago. G Adventures have been going now for 35 years. So it includes now grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins traveling together, and older and younger. Like my kids have a cousin who's 50 years old, and they're only 20, and they actually did a trip together recently. And they wanted to connect with people in the destination, using travel as a way to connect, as opposed to, and that's a very different reason why people travel, because people usually want to travel to see something, or they want to, see Machu Picchu or see Galapagos, but now they want to experience things and create connectedness together while going on holidays. As opposed to, staying in separate hotels or staying separately and just meeting for activities. They want to have that whole experience together. And the difference, what makes it different? Every trip is that we curate for G Adventures, we extend that over to National Geographic. So what G Adventures really done, I guess people kind of call us a community tourism, like we're the global leader in the concept of community tourism. Prior to that, people thought of us as ecotourism, sustainable tourism, responsible tourism. What is that? We never identified with any of those types of tourism until we redefined what the concept of community tourism really means. And when you do that, you're actually creating programs that link to people's core values. And when you're actually putting programs together and thinking about values first, that was really important for the building of the relationship with National Geographic, because them working with us was because they found an organization that shared their values first. When we did the relationship together, it took 2 years to do a contract with them, and there was no talk of commercials until the last 6 months. It was all about whether our values of our two companies matched. So when we're building those programs, we're doing that same values matching to the customers, that these trips match the values of those customers, and that people are raising their children at home in a certain set of values, and they want to share those same values when they travel. And so we believe at G Adventures that there's a huge tipping point with all of travel, but traditionally over the last 40 years of travel, with the rise of cruises and the rise of compound resorts, people feel that because they're traveling during the country, they can suspend how they live at home, and be traveling unsustainable forms or irresponsible forms because they're in another country and not linking their values to their holiday choices. But every trip is curated with National Geographic values at the core of what we do. Photography and storytelling, like National Geographic is big with their photography, but storytelling is at the heart of what they do. And so everything has to be a story. Every stop, everywhere we go, has to be a story to create that learning element and the curiosity that we're trying to spark with children. And it's just very different of how we looked at travel previously. Wildlife and conservation becomes super important to those values, and sharing that with kids. And of course, exploration, just that idea that kids are born explorers, and we want to encourage that exploration when they're children, so they have that, they can bring that as adults. That, ties into curiosity, and, being naturally curious, which connects to learning. And what travel gives a family is probably the first thing that, this is how we market and, of course, sell it to the customer. But of course, these are the things that we found that the data was that when we were looking at the data and we were doing surveys, these are the kind of things that they thought were really important. The first thing is unbreakable bonds. Nothing will bring your family closer together than setting foot in an unexplored territory together. The idea that you're seeing a new culture together within your own value system brings very, very close bonds. And it's something that you can't do, food, as we just talked about earlier, becomes a very important part of our journeys with our trips. Sharing food with locals, sharing food and food tells its own story of any kind of culture, and that's an incredible important element. I'm a very big believer in food and families being together at home, and I was raised in an Asian family growing up, and I don't know if any of you have seen a very old Ang Lee, who's a very big American director now. Before he came to America, he was a big Taiwanese director, and he directed a Academy Award winning film called Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, and that is about how families are built around meals and food and spending time and connecting together. Travel is expanding on that spectrum of the success of families, where you can connect to culture, people, food, and experiences. The global classroom, the learning element, bringing textbooks to life with a real world learning that's actually fun for the whole family. That's a huge part of, especially with National Geographic, with the National Geographic family. As I mentioned before, about the lifelong learning element that's extending to young. And people being more active and traveling and being older, they naturally want to instill these values early with their children or grandchildren or cousins or nephews or nieces or whatever. The sense of wonder, sparking your children's curiosity and watch them blossom into lifelong passion for exploration. I'm going to give you some live examples of this in a second, just in terms of my own experiences with my own kids. But this is a very straightforward. When you take your kids, you give them. I've known so many kids that have traveled with me when I travel with friends who bring kids on trips that are shy or a little bit introverted, and we get them out to Morocco or get them out to a trip, and it brings out another side of them of confidence. Curiosity, but the risk taking and exploration become a really big part of the values we bring to children on family trips. Memories for a lifetime, that speaks for itself. I always say to people, like, some people want to travel with their kids at 5 and 6, and I always say to them, what age do you remember clearly when you were as a child? What is the benefit of traveling at 5 or 6, as opposed to, your clearest memories probably start when you're 8, 9, 10. Some people, do you remember, do anyone here remember, their kindergarten class and how much they remember? But, and everyone has a different philosophy on that. I travel with my kids from 5 and 6, regardless of, they have very faint memories of those times now, but it still built their confidence and their curiosity and their hunger to explore, which is what was really important for me when I started traveling with my kids younger. Quality time uninterrupted. We are in an increasingly wired and connected world. That's not going away anytime soon. We have to consciously and methodically make time to connect and find uninterrupted time, and travel is the perfect way to do that. And not having, meeting, between appointments and schedules. I'm the worst for that. I mean, I've told my wife numerous times, if it's not on my schedule, it doesn't exist. The time doesn't exist if it's on my schedule, which she hates when I say that. But getting away from that connected world and being able to connect uninterrupted on travel is a favorite reason. And these are some things that we never thought about when we created trips for adults. But it's now an important element when we're doing family journey. And this one is probably the most important. This one is raising global citizens. This was the most important thing for me in terms of giving your kids a global perspective of just the world, their place in the universe. And I can't tell you how, well, travel, first of all, is great for that for just adults. Like more adults should know where their place in the universe. But giving kids that opportunity to understand their place by seeing how other people live and other cultures live and other families live, and how it gives them a greater appreciation of where they come from, but a greater understanding of how other people live, will just, I think, is the fastest path to peace on the planet if more and more people traveled. If more and more people see how other people lived and respected other people in other communities, other religions, other cultures, I think we'd have a lot less division, divisiveness, and violence in the world. That's my own personal belief. And let me just quickly talk about my own personal experience. These are my two daughters. I did a trip with my two daughters every year for, they did every year from the ages of 6, the youngest, until 18. Every spring break, we went on a trip every year together. I'm going to actually show you. If I pulled it up here. If you guys, I don't have this on a slide, but I don't know if people can see. The camera's probably not on. Can you see this? Can you see me?
Yeah.
Can you see that picture of me and my daughter?
Mm-hmm.
I was just in Antarctica with my daughter last week.
Oh,
So we went to,
wow.
I just came back from Antarctica last Thursday, and I took her, I lost a bet, actually. It's a long story, but I had to take, I'd been to Antarctica 6 times. I didn't think I needed to see Antarctica again in my life, I'll be honest with you. But my daughter made me take her, and I took her to Antarctica last week. But the whole idea of global citizens, my experiences with my kids, traveling with some of, we started originally when they were young, but then we started inviting parents of their friends. And by the end, we had a group of 5 families that traveled every spring break with our kids every year, going to places like India and Morocco and Costa Rica. And we went to South Africa, Iceland, with just different trips every year. It just gave my kids, I think, a global point of view about the world that I think that other kids don't have. It's very comfortable traveling anywhere, cultures. My one daughter just graduated from university now. She graduated 6 months earlier, and she worked very hard to finish 6 months earlier so she can travel this next 6 months. This is the one that I just took to Antarctica. And from the experiences of just us being together, having to spend that time. But my daughter now, they raised money for different projects over the years. I could tell you stories about how they raised a bunch of the kids on there that we ended up traveling with when we started getting other parents together, raised money for water tanks in Panama for a community of Panama through their school, managed to raise enough money to build 3 water tanks into this community to catch rainwater. And we got to go to Panama with the group, and they got to see the kids. They reported back to the school and created that engagement. And as my daughter, who graduated now, she's applying to law schools, and she's applying to some like Ivy League law schools in the US. These kind of experiences they had are the best things for applications in terms of the things they did when they traveled and raised money and showed themselves as kind of amazing global citizens that they become through travel. Both of my daughters, one has traveled to over 50 countries and one's traveled over 40 countries, and they're both like 23 and 21. But supporting global families, that's also a big part of this. The best thing about travel is if done right, it can be transformational for everyone. The travel industry, unfortunately, it always concentrates on it being only on the traveler and the luxury features for the traveler. We believe that travel can be transformational for communities, can create poverty alleviation, create wealth distribution. We're traveling to some of the 40 poorest countries in the world, buying these luxury vacations. But if the money doesn't stay in the actual economy and benefit local families, we're missing a huge opportunity within travel to be transformational. And how, some families' way of giving back could actually go on holidays because they're going to benefit local communities if done right. And that's the dream has been for G Adventures for 35 years. And I'm going to end with a very short video if I can. I don't know if you guys can all see this, but this is National Geographic short video just to show kids in action here on some of our trips. Just give me 2, it's very short, 1 minute. Let's give this a try.
You are my favorite place to go. You're at the end of my favorite road. Above the rest, you're the best I know. You are my favorite shade of rose. A flower bed on my favorite stone. I love the ground where your roots grow. You're my favorite place.
That's it for me.
That's beautiful, Bruce. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, I really enjoyed this. You really blended both meals and family very, very nicely with traveling as families, and was bringing back a few memories of some of the trips I've taken, both with my parents or with friends and by myself on tours or other adventures. So thank you so much. This was an excellent presentation. And traveling is very important economically. I'm an economist by background. And I looked up some statistics from the WTO, the World Tourism Organization. And back in 2023, something like 1.3 billion arrivals were registered. That means so many people cross the border into another country. And, you know, the whole population of the world is something like, what, 8.5 billion. So this is a significant movement of people. And also in terms of, well, the economics of it, something like $1.5 trillion was spent on travel. And as you mentioned very nicely, a lot of people do visit countries that are among the least developed countries, as we call them at the UN. And the travel industry is very labor intensive. So to the extent that, you know, there is a tourism industry in even some of the poorest countries, it employs a lot of people and helps reduce poverty, in addition to all of the other benefits that you mentioned. Let me start the questioning by asking you, Bruce, one question. With these family journeys that you run, your tour guides, do they need any special training? You know, in addition to just shepherding people around the world, I mean, being that they're dealing only with families, do they need any special training for that?
Yeah, they need a lot. But not only it's special training, but they do have to be certain type of personality type as well. The success of any family trip is the success of the children. Let's just be frank. It's this, and so we found that we need leaders, or we call chief experience officers. We need them to be young at heart, to be able to spend quality time with the kids. There are great CEOs that lead groups together and kind of appeal to the talking natural history and of the region to the parents, but they equally have to be able to engage children, and so that does take a different personality type than we have traditionally with our tour leaders, who are used to just engaging adults. So that training also comes along with it, with specific family training on terms of the expectations of them, in terms of, like, kids want to play games in the evening, they want to play cards, they want to do. They're constantly active, even between bus rides. With adults, they just want to just look forward and be quiet. Kids want to be engaged while they're driving. They want to play games like roadside bingo, or the first person who sees this kind of bird gets a little prize. All of those things become important elements, and that is all done through training, to understand the needs of kids. And they're not going to sit quietly in a bus while you're going between cities for 2.5 hours. We have to have activities planned. Music becomes really important. Adults want a certain type of music. Kids want a very different type of music. Having buses that have where you can you go through Bluetooth, engage your music source on your phone, becomes super huge for kids.
Mm-hmm. Very good, thank you. Let me ask a question to Lydia before I go to the chat box. I see we have 10 questions, and I'll take off my glasses so I can read afterwards. Lydia, here in New York City, we have 2 and a third on the way of Italy. Are you still involved? I remember I saw you once walking around in Italy, and I was so overwhelmed I couldn't think of a thing to say, so I didn't walk over to you, and I'm sorry I didn't, but
Yes,
are you still involved, or your family with Italy?
yeah, to some extent, the family is, everything we do is sort of now family situation. Italy really has grown a lot, a big conglomerate, if you will. Italian is supporting it in growth, and it's going to open in many different cities. At least try to open. It's been a big success. It feels like Italy. People love it, and the products are basically all Italian products, acknowledged, sort of labeled, and part of the Italian culture. So Americans love Italy, loves Italian food, and so the stores are doing quite well. Thank you for asking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed around Christmas time I walked over to Hudson Yards, and I see there's an Italy coming to Hudson Yards shortly.
Yes, absolutely.
And I've also been to the one in Milan, which is 5 stories.
Yeah, that's sort of the big one, if you will, that opened. The first one actually opened in Torino, but that's the sort of exposure, the big one of all of the Italian, and it's a beautiful one.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Well, let me take off my glasses so I can read what's in the chat box and see what sort of questions we have. Bruce, regarding your comments on supporting global families, how difficult is it to keep the travel revenue generated in the actual families in these countries? I sometimes wonder if the tourism benefits the entities outside the families and countries, but little accrues to the local people or families doing work for the tourists.
Yeah. So I can tell you what we do. So that's very, very important to us. We have something that's very unique at G-Adventures called the Ripple Score. So every single one of our trips has a percentage score when you look on our website or look at any of our brochures, which gives you a score of the actual money that's spent running your trip on the ground, what percentage stays in the community. So that was created I think about maybe 10 years ago that we launched it. Not quite 10, maybe about 8 years ago. But what it does is it changed our buying patterns around the world on who we buy our hotels from, when our restaurants come, because they have to be local and family owned and family run to get a score on our Ripple Score. Because we want our customers to change how they buy and how they look at things to buy. And so we want to be able to say, okay, well, if you buy this trip, like we have 2 in Peru, one has a Ripple Score of 70, because maybe it's a higher luxury trip and some of the hotels weren't locally owned, or they were. But we have these trips that are 100% because we vetted every hotel, every service, every transportation company, every restaurant, and they were owned by a family-run, locally owned family that runs that business. So it's very, very serious business for us. And sometimes we have real problems, like a good example is in Peru, where a big part of our trips to get to the Inca Trail is taking that train up to the Inca Trail up the mountains. And it's very expensive, and sometimes 25–30% of your cost is that train going up to the Machu Picchu, and it's owned by a Spanish company that owns the trail, it's the Inca Rail that goes up there, or Andean Rail. So it gets a very low score for us because that's not anymore locally owned. So, it is easy to do. You say how difficult it is. It is easy to do for operators. But it's not done at all. Let's just say right now with other tour operators and in the travel industry. We are obviously the documentary that I made, which is available, I think, in the States on. I think you guys have Hulu or Apple or Amazon. It's streamed on all those platforms. It's called The Last Tourist. It's all about that, about the leakage created when travelers actually don't the traveling destination and the money is being funneled outside of the country and not benefiting local communities. But for us, that's an important thing, and we do all kinds of different ways. Through our foundation, Planetaire, we actually have 150 community development projects where we work with full communities and families to create tourism experiences like meals and biking programs, different excursions. We do arrival transfers in India with Women on Wheels, which are women that are from marginalized shelters that we give driver's license and cars to do our arrival transfers. We do all kinds of city tours with Street Kids city tour programs all over the world, but we have all those that engage families. But that's us on the extreme end of the industry. The industry can do way better, and that's why I spend most of my time, writing books. I'm writing a new one right now that I just submitted to HarperCollins 2 weeks ago about how travel can be so much more, and we're missing that opportunity as an industry to be transformational for everyone, not just the customer.
Good answer. Thanks very much, Bruce. Here's a question for Lidia. It says here, I'm curious what your all-time favorite food might be. What is your favorite main dish? How about your favorite dessert? Particularly your favorite food that helps you remember your life as a child, your grandmother, etc. The tastes and smells that connect you to your past. I think you covered part of it, but I'm sure you might want to add a few more pointers.
Well, I must say, that the food that I enjoy most is the food that I share with people at the table. But going precisely to food and memory, gnocchi. Of course, I'm going to revert to my Italian background, although one of my other favorite foods is Thai food. I love Thai food. But gnocchi, I remember, it's a potato dumpling. I remember making it with grandma. My kids love making it. It's getting your hands, and it takes so little to dress. You just butter and cheese or any sort of vegetable or everything. So I would say gnocchi, and then of course follow into that vein, pasta, homemade pasta. I love homemade pasta, and lots of vegetables.
How about dessert?
Dessert. Dessert, I love fruit, roasted fruit, tarts, strudel, because again, it's things that we had seasonal, and that's what they use, grandma used, mom used to make the desserts. Although I love crepes or palatine, as we called it, crespelle. Very simple, just some flour, some milk, some eggs, some lemon rind, and you make this fine kind of a, if you will, crespelle, and put jam or chocolate or whatever in it, even just granulated sugar, and we could have that, sort of in 10 minutes it's made, and we loved it. And sometimes it would be dinner. The whole dinner would be just that with a glass of milk.
Mm-hmm. Let me just add, from my Italian family, very often, of course, we always have fruit in the house. I mean, the refrigerator was never without fruit. But we would have fruit and un dolce.
Yes.
So, some sweet. My favorite is tiramisu, which I think was invented in Milan. Someone once took me at a restaurant and told me this is where it was invented. And well, it was absolutely the best there.
Yeah.
We're getting close to the end, and I see we have a question for both of you here. All right. Question to both. How would one go about establishing patterns of eating / traveling if they are not already ingrained in one's family habits?
Should I go first?
Please, Lidia.
I think that food, as Bruce has mentioned, really reflects the flavors of the territory, of the people, of the culture. So it's such a big part of travels now. When people travel, the question is, okay, where are we going to have? Where are we going to have lunch? Where are we going to have dinner? How can we go to the local markets? What is the street food like? So food is really such an important part of the experience, because it really tells you. It tells you the culture of the people, the history, the geography, the topography is all reflected in the food.
I think that like when traveling, food should be fun, and it should be an event. Like it should be, because it tells everything about the history of not just that country, but that community. Like if you go into a smaller Andean village in Peru, as opposed to Cusco or Lima, you're going to get very different foods and very different traditions. And that storytelling is a big part of travel. And you should be able to, encourage that within you, without traveling at all. Like when you, like nothing's a greater disaster for us as operators as when kids come and on trips and all they eat is chicken fingers and macaroni and cheese. Like and their parents allow them to live on that diet. Because you can make food fun and make it part of, one of the most, greatest gifts we have as, in life is exploring other cultures just from your own dinner table at home. Like as Lydia said, like her favorite, she loves Thai food. Like Thai food is an event at our house because each dish is, you're able to tell a story, and you can look that up in terms of what does, where does these various dishes come from. And when your kids are very young, they have GPT, they have, they can look up what pad thai is and where it comes from and what it means. So food can be fun, and you can establish it as part of learning. You can establish it as part of culture. And you can also you can make it a fun part of kids' life, trying different things. They don't have to love everything, but in our house, the rule is you have to try everything. You can't just say you don't like something because of its appearance. You have to try everything. You're allowed to, you're allowed to not like things, but you're not allowed to not try things. Is a very definitive rule in ours, and that's from babies. Like when my kids spit out, when they were eating pablum and minced food, they spit it out. They're getting it. We're going to stop that day, but they're getting it the next day. And you'll be surprised, after 3 times, they'll get used to the consistency and then they'll like it. So food can be a very important part of bringing families together, but that whole concept of what National Geographic is great at is storytelling. Everything has a story, and everything has a culture and a meaning behind it when it comes to food. And that's an amazing gift you can give your kids, just in terms of confidence, the ability, the curiosity, exploration, all of these things we want our kids to be, and ultimately that global citizen, great global citizens, not just great citizens in their community, which is also important, but we want to raise global citizens. I hope we all want to raise kids that are great global citizens, and food, it becomes an really important part of that. Music too.
Well, I see we've run out of time. I know we have more questions, but unfortunately we can't get to them. But I want to thank both Lidia and Bruce for being with us today. You did a great job. You've given us plenty of food to chew on, food for thought. And I really appreciate your being with us today. And also, I want to thank all people who have attended today. We had pretty much a record attendance. And thanks for all of you who have tuned in to this, what I believe has been a very, very instructive, meaningful meeting today. So thank you very much. And we will be back with another meeting sometime in March. And stay tuned. You will be getting emails at some point announcing our next meeting. So thank you all very, very much. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Lidia. Grazie mille, molto gentile.
Prego.
And hopefully there will be a next time. You both have been great, and I'd like to have you back at some point. So thank you again, and good rest of the day to everyone.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.